Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining today. It's a pretty big, important day, and we'll chat and explore that a bit more as we get into the herb walk. But I first want to just acknowledge that, so right now I am between Bellingham and Ferndale and honoring the tribes that are the initial owners and stewards of this land, the Nootka tribe, as well as the Lummi Nation. I'm just taking a moment to honor them. And I am out at my friend Andy's farm again. It's called Nourish Craft Farm, and there's some fun plants. I'm going to try to squeeze in 3 today. I've been on doing an average of 2 plants. But there's, we're getting into the summer months and so much more is blooming and coming out. And I really want to just be able to share as much as I can. It is, of course, another rainy day for this herb walk. So I may have to run and retreat to the greenhouse because I have to hold this phone in front of my face. I do have an umbrella this time, though. That works. Yeah, my name is Dr. Sarah Sue Myers, and I am a naturopathic doctor, teacher, educator, earth steward, mom. And I'm just really honored to be able to be with all of you today. And happy solstice. That is one of the big things going on today. It is June 20th, so tomorrow will be the first official day of summer. There's also a lot going on astrologically with a solar eclipse. Yesterday was Juneteenth, a day that was honoring the end of slavery. And I think it's really important to begin to acknowledge that holiday more and more. So here is freedom and salvation and sunshine. Maybe it'll even come out during this talk. So I'm going to flip the camera here so I could introduce you to the first plant. I actually wasn't going to talk about this one, but I was out here with my son Leonidas yesterday, and I couldn't take my eyes off of them. Look at all these lovely wild roses everywhere. Those sweet little buds. So there's many different kinds of roses. This one is a wild rose, and the main way that I recognize that is the 5-petal presentation. Compared to a lot more of those bred roses, like the English roses and the ones that have just layers upon layers upon layers of petals, these are a more simple, sweet version of them that are native to the Pacific Northwest. Another name for them is called the Nootka Rose, and that's N as in Nile, O-O, T as in tree, K as in kilo, A as in alpha. Nootka. And these Nootka roses grow on these beautiful bushy hedges. Let's see if we can find some thorns. You're not going to have a rose bush unless you have those thorns there. They're not too large and formidable, nothing like the hawthorn tree that we were looking at last month. And one thing that I have been noticing and paying attention to with these roses, because I really love to harvest the petals, is just the broad variety of coloration of them. These ones are such a beautiful, deep pink color. As opposed to other Nootka roses that I have came across in this area that can have a much more lighter, blushy pink color. The one point of connection, though, is that they all are in that sort of color scheme and family of the pink to red coloration, which is a great indicator of some of the medicine present. So I am trying to open this umbrella with one hand, and it is not working. I'm going to set this phone down for a moment while I continue to talk so I can open up my umbrella and keep this phone dry. All right. Here we go. So let's take a walk. I was kind of hoping to do more of a walk today with you guys. Here's some more of them. Nice and windy out here, and there's a train that's going to be coming by. Here's some of those thorns that are being represented on this stick. And I can tell you that they have a very divine aromatic smell to them. That beautiful rose smell. And I think my favorite part about harvesting the rose petals is letting them sit in my drying baskets in the house and just having that smell permeate through the room that they're located in. It's really lovely. I mean, I think that's actually a really great place to start medicinally with the roses, is just the aromatherapy aspect of them. I'm curious for all of you out there, kind of what feelings or emotions arise when you are able and have the opportunity to smell a rose, or smell like an essential oil or a rose water or some sort of herbal product that has been made with roses. I see bliss. Yeah. What else? Soothing and calming. Enchantment. Ooh. Yeah. I can't help but think of the word divine as well to describe that. Uplifting. You know, there's so many and a lot of these peaceful, yeah, you know, rose and the rose family in general, but also specifically the rose flower, is connected deeply to the heart. It has a heart association with it. It's like, you know, it's historically a flower that's given to a sweetheart, and it's a flower that's utilized in a lot of beauty care products that, oh, I think that there is someone that's not on mute, and because I'm hearing a little bit of feedback. If you guys can check your mute button, that would be helpful. But a lot of beauty products have the rose in it as well, just for that self-love and that self-care that we are encouraged to, that I want to encourage you all to do by the end of this walk today. Roses are also, coincidentally, really great for the skin. There are tannins that are found in the rose petals, and tannins have a sort of astringent or tightening of the tissue type effect. So really great topically for the skin, you know, helping with tonifying the tissue of our skin presentation aesthetically, but it's also great medicinally for helping with wound healing, and it really helping to tighten up the tissues where things might be open and oozing and having a discharge, whether it's healing a cut or a wound, a skin condition that has a tendency to be weepy, something like eczema, fungal infection can be, you know, pretty irritating and open and inflamed. And plants that contain tannins and astringents applied topically can really soothe and palliate those symptoms. You know, another really important thing to think about when you see roses, and not only just these beautiful flowers that are open, but the rose hips that consequently form once the flower is done forming. And I actually want to just show you that. So, oh, there goes my umbrella. I'll go get it in a minute. You see that little tiny base at the bottom of the rose there? not those 4 leaf-like petals at the base, but that little tiny nodule that is underneath the base of the flower. So that part, once the flowers fall off, begins to mature and enlarge and ripen and turn into this deep red color as it forms into the rose hip of the plant. Let's see if I can find another one to show you. If you guys do live near roses, I invite you to pay attention. Next time you stop at one, absolutely smell it. But also just take time to notice all those little details. And especially as the season progresses, you may find the opportunity to notice that formation of the rose hip, which the rose hips will typically ripen and become ready for harvest late summer, early fall, which is great timing because that is a time when typically the first round of flu and cold season comes around, is that autumn time. And rose hips are incredibly nutritious and packed with vitamin C, which vitamin C is really great at combating free radicals in the body, inflammation, oxidative stress, which we can receive oxidative stress in our bodies from so many different things in our environment. It can be from, you know, fumes, off-gassing from vehicles when we're stuck in traffic, off-gassing of material, like new materials that have a smell to them, from different agents and chemicals that are added to foods, especially in conventional farming. It can be just from over sun exposure. It can be from stress, you know, just simply being in a constant state of stress, or that sympathetic dominant state of fight or flight constantly, when we're not receiving that balance of recovery and parasympathetic rest and digest, that can create a lot of inflammation and oxidative stress in our bodies. So, you know, incorporating in herbs that have anti-inflammatory properties that help combat those free radicals is such important daily intake for our self-care. And then the vitamin C also is really important for the regeneration of collagen in wound healing. Vitamin C is actually incorporated into what is referred to as the matrix of collagen, which collagen is sort of like the foundational body part of the skin and the topical tissue of our body. And that needs to get rebuilt and regenerated if there is damage to the tissue. And this can be internally or externally, but right now I'm referring to more the external application of rose. One great way to utilize rose petal medicine is simply by making an herbal infusion with the petals. So heating up hot water and adding the rose petals to it, turning off the heat when you add the roses, because they're very light, delicate parts of the plants. You don't really need to overcook and boil and overheat them too much, but giving them ample time to sit and infuse into the water, and using that as an herbal healing wash. You can soak Band-Aids or gauzes in it, not Band-Aids, but gauze, and then taping it onto a wound. It's really great actually doing an herbal infusion bath to the area that needs healing. This is one of the herbs. I'm actually going to talk about another one that I like to add to it later, calendula. It's really great for a healing sitz bath, especially for postpartum women, or you know, just to help with that tissue regeneration following birth, which is a huge endeavor. And whether it's, you know, vaginal delivery or cesarean section, there's some pretty significant wounds to heal, and rose and calendula are really safe and powerful allies to help with the healing of the tissue and the regeneration of the tissue. And I really think that there's just like a bonus because you receive the aromatherapy of the rose petals as well. And all of those descriptions you guys shared, like those are all just such great emotions to cultivate and embody in that really sweet postpartum period as well. Because birth can be such a shock to the system, and then all of a sudden there's a child there to take care of. And so there's a huge amount of transformation in the works. And, you know, bringing in herbs like rose that are very heart-centered can be so incredibly therapeutic. Roses also have a really cooling property to them. So also helping to just cool the inflammation down as well. You know, you think about the qualities of herbs, like for roses, it's very cooling and drying. So thinking about like those conditions of inflammation, how those can be really hot and congested and inflamed. And those conditions create symptoms and experiences such as pain. What else? I saw a question in regards to harvesting. Correct me if I'm wrong. The question was about, can you harvest them off of the roadside? Was that correct? Okay. Great question. It depends what kind of road it is. You know, if it's, so these are along the roadside, but it's a dirt road driveway that multiple, you know, it still gets a bit of traffic, but not as significant as major roads. And so you have to consider the fact that there is runoff of a lot of the gasoline and oil that comes from vehicles, and that certainly runs off and is absorbed by the plants in the surrounding area. So would I harvest next to a busier road? No. And also, I just don't think I would even enjoy the process of harvesting along a busier road. But, you know, taking a look here, you know, especially if there are some in your neighborhood, I like to just leave the external ones there. For one, bees love them. And they have been pollinating them like crazy, I've noticed. And I want to be sure to respect them as priority for utilizing that rose medicine. Also, there's a lot of dogs on this property, but I also think about like on trails, like you don't want to harvest from like the ground up until like the height of a tall dog, right? Because there's a chance that they may have like, you know, urinated on any area of this. So I usually will go for like the more far-reaching ones back here, especially if there's only like 1 or 2 rose bushes. You know, leaving the first plant you found is, you know, one consideration, and respectfully and sustainably harvesting any plants. You know, if you're just finding one single growth of it, like say this solo Rumex here, I'm gonna just need to let it be because that's the only one there, and look elsewhere. I will say that the Nootka Rose is very prolific in Washington State, and especially on the San Juan Islands. They are everywhere. And that not only bees pollinate them, so do hummingbirds, which is pretty fun. Actually, if you ever go out harvesting and you know you're going to be around hummingbirds, be mindful of you wearing red clothes. They love red, and they are attracted to red because there's a lot of red flowers. So whether you want to like draw the hummingbirds in, great, but know that they might be zooming right by your face. So expect to be startled. I actually learned that lesson last week when I was harvesting some of these. Here's some of the lighter colored ones back here. But keep your eyes open. You may find that there's like a cleaner, safer spot to harvest. Just knowing that anything alongside a road is going to be absorbing and taking in a lot of that polluted water. And knowing like where the water system runoffs are in your area. There's one in mind that it looks like a really beautiful area, but they make really clear signs. Oh, hang on, my dog is, sorry about that, not moving. Okay. You know, get educated on your water systems and where the water runoff is going and what body of water is it actually flowing into, and what is actually the safety of that water and of that region. Like, is it even safe enough to be putting your feet in? I know there's one area up in the Bellingham region that really is not, and there's a lot of signs that actually encourage people to not touch the water or get in the water due to the health issues at hand. And a lot of that has to do just with human activity. You know, vehicle use, the use of different substances that are applied to lawns and plants, pest reduction. There's so many activities that humans are trying to solve a problem that ends up leading to a bigger problem beyond their backyard. So I really urge all of you to start thinking about these, like, what is the chain of reactions that's happening with each choice that we make, and how it impacts the safety and health of our plants and our ecosystems in our neighborhood, and how can we be good allies and stewards of our plant allies here. One way that I really enjoy harvesting and processing the rose hips, which is not now obviously, but later on, is you can dry them and just simply make a tea with them. I've also been taught the idea and creative art process of making rose hip jam, and that is something my teacher, Dr. Deborah Francis, taught me, which I think I've mentioned her in every walk I've done so far, because she's a very profound teacher for me. But she will do a rose hip jam, and she'll sometimes add in other berries, and not only is it really delicious, but it is a potent antioxidant, high in vitamin C, great for combating things where there's just too much inflammation that, you know, predisposes us to these sort of experiences. One great example of that is seasonal allergies. Seasonal allergies, a lot of times perceived in naturopathic medicine, is more of just like a total inflammation overload sort of issue. And so the premise is, if you start to lower that cup of inflammation, the metaphorical cup of our bodies being that, but the total load of the inflammation, that it'll often help palliate and decrease the symptoms of things like allergies. Asthma is another example of that. Any questions about roses? Okay. Now we are going to take advantage of the no rain. I'm going to drop my umbrella off, and we're going to walk on over to meet our other wound healing ally of the day, Calendula. The Latin name for it is Calendula officinalis. And this is the time of year that they begin to open up and flower. And does anyone grow or cultivate calendula in their own yards or gardens? Yes. So I am curious what kind of behaviors you have noticed with the calendula flower. So let's see, they self-seed like crazy. Yes, they do. They are so vital and prolific, and thank goodness for that. we can use all the calendula we can get. They also close up once the sun is gone and then open back up when the sun comes back out. Very similar to morning glories, though a different plant family altogether. They are from the Asteraceae family, or the aster family. It's also known as like the composite flower family. Daisies in it. What else? Sunflowers. All right. Here we go. There's that beautiful, bright, sunshiny calendula. And I love this specimen, this plant. I've noticed it's been demonstrated on the other couple calendulas that are out here. The first one that came up was this center one. It was sort of like the mother shoot of the calendula, and she opened herself up first, and now following are all the more periphery flowers. But for like about a week, this single flower just stood, she stood strong and tall. And here's another one, which is a completely different color. More of like a white to orange color, whereas we had over here orange to that deep red color. And that's one really fun thing about the calendula plants, is just the variation in their presentation, even within the single plant. Here's another one over here. And calendulas, they don't have a very strong characteristic smell to them. That's not really where the forte of the medicine is. The leaves themselves, they're pretty smooth edged. These ones are really congregated. No hairs. Well, there's a few hairs actually. They're very different character, and when you squeeze them or do a little like rubbing of the leaves, there is you can feel a slight stickiness and mucilaginous feeling, which are some of the plant constituents that help with the medicinal actions that they provide. Same with the flowers and the petals. If you begin to squeeze them up and handle them a decent amount, you'll also notice there's a bit of a stickiness to them. Yeah. So again, I mentioned this before, calendula can be really great for wound healing as well, and is a great complement to adding rose petals to an herbal formula to help with healing. Another great one that I would love to include in a topical skin herb healing formula would probably be the yarrow that I talked about 2 weeks ago. Yarrow is also really supportive in healing tissue, helping stop bleeding, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, as is the calendula. It has those potent antimicrobial properties. And that when I say microbes, I'm referring to bacteria as well as viruses and fungi. One thing I really like about calendula too is that it helps with the regeneration of the connective tissue as well. And not only is it doing these antimicrobial activities and helping with the architecture of rebuilding our tissue in our bodies, but it also helps with the pain that a wound experiences and feels. And I really appreciate that extra characteristic of the calendula, because it's helping in so many ways internally to help heal, but it's also like really doing us a favor to just cut back on that pain. The herbal action term for that is called analgesic. So again, reducing pain. Another special thing about calendula is that it helps the flow and movement of lymphatic fluid. Our lymphatic system is also comprised of vessels, just like our cardiovascular system, you know, the arteries and veins that flow towards and away from the heart and deliver oxygen and many other nutrients to all of the tissues in our bodies. Our lymphatic system is comprised of vessels as well. They are much, much smaller. They go deep all the way to very superficial, just underneath our skin or dermis layer. And the lymphatic system is responsible for delivering immune cells that are needed for healing to different parts of our body, but it also helps with the cleanup as a result of the healing and the tissue injury that is happening. So it brings the supplies in, but it also helps bring and clear out all the excess things that are no longer needed, including cellular debris that is just a byproduct of healing in the body. And so it can help clear out areas. We also have the lymph nodes of the lymphatic system. I'm going to turn this around for a moment to just show you where those are located. I mean, they're all over our body, but the more superficial lymph nodes that I think a lot of us have maybe had a little bit of experience or exposure with, and maybe even just experience our own symptoms in that area, are the cervical lymph nodes that go all the way along our jawline down to our clavicles or collarbones. Also on the occiput, so the occiput's the base of the skull, and so right in that area is a congregation of lymph nodes. We have them behind and under our ears, in front of our ears, and then all along our neck muscles here. The other areas of congregation of lymph nodes are under our arms, the axilla area, along the breast tissue. We have superficial lymph nodes in the fold of our legs or the groin. The anatomical name for that region is the inguinal region. And then the other superficial places include behind the knee, and then just on the inside of the arm, the epitrochlear lymph nodes. And those are great places to focus self-care practices, such as like dry skin brushing, any just light massage towards the heart, whether it's the neck massaging towards the heart. This is so tricky holding a phone. Massaging the armpits, the axillary lymph nodes towards the heart. That can be really helpful and supportive to just helping to continue to keep those lymphatic channels open. And so there are plants that also support helping with the lymphatic flow, and calendula is one of those. And let's just turn this photo back to the calendula. It's just such a beautiful one to look at. It has an affinity for draining the lymphatic region of the neck, those cervical lymph nodes, as well as the inguinal lymph nodes. Really beautiful, and it's such a sunshiny herb, you know, and the fact that it has this behavior that it closes at night and then opens up when the sun arrives. I couldn't think of a more perfect time to introduce her to you guys than the day leading up to the summer solstice, which the summer solstice is this really important time in the calendar that the sun is at its peak. We are experiencing the longest day of the year. We get the longest exposure of sun this time of year. Yeah, look at that one. And it's a great time to reflect our relationship with the sun as well. And just arriving at this halfway point, you know, we're halfway through the year since the winter solstice started, and just sort of doing a review and a check-in, like, where am I at? Like, how far have I came since the solstice? Like, what intentions did I make at the beginning of the year? And am I staying on path? Am I staying on track? Like, is this a time to maybe just take a moment to like reflect and rest and maybe even celebrate? This is a very celebratory time of year. I think that this is a really important time. What came up for me this morning is just not only the reflection aspect, but like, what kind of self-care are you needing right now? Like, giving this a moment to just really reflect and sit back. Like, what has my growth been with this? And where do I need some care right now so that I can continue moving forward with the work that I'm doing and the intentions that I'm setting? Before I walk away from calendula, I want to share the different ways that you can utilize the medicine of the calendula. So again, infusions of the herbs, primarily the flowers used for calendula, as well as the stem. I also wanted to show you, so here's an example of that, if my phone is willing to respond to me. Here we go. I made a tea this morning, and I stuck 3 sprigs of calendula flowers in there, stem and all. I think there's even like a little bit of flower. There is some yarrow flowers in there, and then the other flowers in there are holy basil, which is the herb that we will end the walk with today, or complete the walk with today. And just pouring in hot boiling water and letting it infuse. And doing this as a sitz bath or creating some healing bath or soak for an external wound, you would just want to make a really potent tea. And then either, you know, you can refrigerate it and save it so you don't have to do batch by batch each time you apply it. Or just doing a really concentrated tea and then adding it to a bath. Especially like with a postpartum sitz bath, it's really nice having a really concentrated tea, but then also adding some, you know, like healing Epsom salts to it as well, or baking soda. Really just making it as healing and luxurious as possible for that postpartum mama care. Calendula can also be tinctured. And that a tincture is a liquid extract, typically where there's an alcohol used to extract the constituents. And calendula tincture is a nice way to take it. It's a more potent form of the medicine. You're going to get a stronger effect with taking it that way. And it's a much more easy and effective way to take it internally. But also, calendula tincture can be used topically as well, especially if that's right there on hand and you don't actually have any flowers like in the garden and it's maybe like January where it's just not in season. Tinctures are a great way to preserve the plant medicine. I mean, otherwise just simply drying it. I don't often see calendula flowers powdered into capsules as frequently, but where I do see them really shine and pretty prolific is in topical salves and lotions. I think almost every single healing salve that I have seen and taken time to look at the ingredients, at least natural healing salve, calendula is most certainly in there because it's just so powerful at that wound healing, that topical wound healing. So effective and so safe. This is a really safe plant. The only consideration to think about when you're beginning to work with calendula is if you have a susceptibility of allergies to any of the other plants in the aster family. Sunflower, daisies, dandelions. Dandelions is in the aster family. You may also have an allergy to the calendula. And so beginning any new herb for the first time, start low, go slow, and listen to your body. Pay attention to what, how your body's responding to it. Any questions? How long would you steep the calendula for the infusion? So because often we are working only with the calendula flower, it's going to be a lighter infusion. So bringing that water to a boil and then adding the flower, and you remove it from heat and cover it. It's really important to cover the plants when you're doing an herbal infusion, because there are certain chemical constituents in the plants that can escape through the steam, such as volatile oils. At least 15 minutes, if not 30 minutes. Honestly, I think the longer you can get away with allowing that infusion time, the more medicine you're gonna get. And truly, like, you're not gonna probably get all the medicine in one infusion. Like, even with this, and it's been sitting in here for quite a while, I'll probably do a double pour once I finish drinking this tea and be able to even extract out more medicine. And I invite that as something for you guys to practice as well, like seeing, you can do double infusions with a lot of these herbs and get out more of the medicine. And it may not be as potent, so you can add more. Oh, I'm spilling my tea here. I should drink it. But just thinking about the preservation and really like optimizing the use of these plants. Any other questions? So even though it's rainy today, it's definitely warmer than it's been. I was gonna sit in this greenhouse to talk about this last one, but I think I might get a sample and walk out because it's really doing its job this morning. But let me just show you this lovely row here. This is holy basil. I'm gonna get a close-up of these flowers. The Latin name for holy basil is Ocimum sanctum. Not to be confused with sweet basil, which is the Latin genus name for it is also Ocimum, but a different species name. Sanctum, like sanctuary. It is the Latin term for holy. I love it when it works out like that. And the basils are from the mint family. And so they do have one characteristic of any plant from the mint family is they have a square stem. And look at this stem. There's these fuzzy little hairs on it. Let's just take a look at one of the leaves here. Here we go. There's the front and the back. So lightly serrated edges. Has a nice teardrop shape to it. Pretty small, petite little leaf. Very aromatic. And there are nice little aromatic hairs on there. When you squeeze those hairs, like in many mint plants, it releases the volatile oils of the plant. That smell. And then, like many of the mint plants, it has purple flowers that kind of have an orchid, honeysuckle type look to them. I've been trying to explain this to my son, how they look. Let me see if I can get a sample here to bring out so it's not so warm in here. Here we go. The shape of the flowers have a little landing pad for the pollinators on that front. You know, they have the stamen and anthers that hold the pollen, but then there's this nice petal that is right underneath it. And I've been calling this a landing pad to my 2-year-old to help him start to learn and identify the characteristics of it. And I really wish you guys were all here, because you're really missing out on one of my favorite characteristics of the holy basil, which is the smell of it. It has a basil-like quality to it, like the sweet basil, but there's a spiciness to it. And it's very uplifting. Uplifting is really the word that I can think of when I think about holy basil. It's an Ayurvedic medicine, also used in Western medicine as well. Holy basil has many different actions, and like most of the mint plants, it does have antimicrobial properties against bacteria, viruses, fungi. Those volatile oils that are emitted and released from the plant are the antimicrobial properties. I believe there's some other ones. And again, here's the sweet basil. I'm really appreciative right now that Andy grew them next to each other. Look at this sweet basil. So just comparing what the sweet basil looks like compared to the holy basil. The sweet basil has more of that crinkly curliness to the leaf. It's much more smooth. And it's a much larger leaf most of the time. All right, I'm gonna take a step out of here to finish the talking. We'll take this guy. That's a nice specimen. Holy basil is a great adaptogen. Speaking of self-care, adaptogens are really, really useful characteristics to help support the stress response in the body. And they typically act at the adrenal glands, but not necessarily all of them. With holy basil, this is unique. A lot of the adaptogens that I have been educated about and know about are roots. So I think about licorice root, devil's club root, eleuthero and ginseng root. But then we do have a couple of these more flowery, floral, leafy adaptogens. And last time we talked about borage, and then here we have the holy basil. I really think it also gives a much more like uplifting support to us energetically than some of those deeper root, like grounding energetic properties of the other ones, which they're all great, but you know, thinking about honing on what kind of adaptogen support would actually be good for me, I like thinking about the energetics of the plants and what part of the plant medicine is actually used. I'm going to close this door so it doesn't slam shut. There we go. Plus, holy basil is a lot easier to cultivate. You're harvesting the leaves and the flowers. You can use the flowers, the leaves, as well as the stems, and the old flowering parts that are turning into seeds. All parts can be used for the medicine, and then you can grow more. Whereas like harvesting a plant for its root really can lead to the end of the life of that plant. So using more of these leafy adaptogens is also just like a little bit more supportive for the plant itself. Holy basil has an affinity for the upper chakras as well. I'm going to turn this around to just kind of point out. We're not going to go into depth about the chakras by any means, but I did want to just introduce the concept of them. So there's 7 main chakras, arguably like a lot more, but that's kind of the basic template for chakra, learning about chakras. You have your crown chakra, third eye chakra, throat chakra, heart chakra, solar plexus, sacral, and root chakra. And these are just really concentrated, potent points in our bodies where there's a lot of energy and different themes. Each chakra has a different theme. And I associate holy basil more with these upper chakras, so third eye and crown chakra, that really connect us to these like more higher universal energies, whereas the lower chakras are going to ground us into more of these like earthly rooted energies. And so this can be incredibly uplifting as well as supportive and nourishing. An adaptogen, the way I like to describe it as a naturopath, is that if things are too high, it helps lower it or calm them down. If things are too low, it helps lift them up and support them. One example of this with the holy basil is that if the body is not appropriately responding to insulin, which is a hormone that's secreted from the pancreas that tells the body to basically store the sugar that's floating around in the bloodstream, what happens with things like type 2 diabetes is that it's not an insulin supply issue that's going on, but the body becomes resistant to the conversation and the communication with insulin itself. It stops responding to it as quickly. Insulin resistance. It gets sluggish in its communication, is one way to think about it. And the support of something like holy basil helps to bring back and to restore that communication link between insulin and the body. It helps to make the body's response to insulin be more sensitive and more quick. So it can be really helpful at managing blood glucose levels. Even if there's not a blood glucose issue, it's doing this. So sometimes if you're taking in the holy basil medicine on an empty stomach, you may need to eat some food shortly after as well, because it can perpetuate hypoglycemia as well. Another really great medicine that I learned about for holy basil was when I was in school. I worked at the Bastille Herb Garden with a lot of amazing colleagues, teachers, friends. And one of the women I worked with, her name is Shayla Brown, who is a talented herbalist. She taught me about how holy basil leaves absorb fluoride in water. So simply just sticking some holy basil into your water, such as this, helps to bind and hold on to some of these additives and toxins that are added to the waters and filter them out for us. And that has been one of the primary elements or halogens that has been studied. I am curious what other kind of things that the holy basil binds from the earth, from water. Incredibly anti-inflammatory as well, so helping to, again, combat that inflammation, free radical damage, the oxidation that is occurring in our bodies. Again, especially just like in these times that are just so stressful right now on all levels, it's really important, I think, for all of us to be inviting in these self-care acts and inviting in herbal allies such as the holy basil, the rose, the calendula, things that are going to cool us down, uplift us, balance us, so that we can then feel restored and return to the work at hand that needs to be done. A really wise teacher of mine, Robert Lester, shared with me once is that giving from a place of scarcity is sacrifice. It's not called service at that point, it's called sacrifice. And to truly be of service, you got to fill that tank up first. I share that quote with almost all the mothers that I work with in my practice. And I want to also include grandparents and fathers and aunts and uncles. It's just so important that we are making sure that our tanks are filled with the support of our herbal allies, our friends, getting enough adequate sleep, drinking enough water. It's, you know, it's getting hot. It's finally getting warm in the Pacific Northwest right now. And let's not forget, for those of us that are in this area, that it does take a while to acclimate to that heat and the sun coming out. And I invite you and challenge you to start drinking like an extra liter of water, not liter, sorry, at least an extra cup of water. If not like 5 extra cups of water, because that'll really help the body in supporting its acclimation to these warmer, hotter days, sometimes more humid days, sometimes more drier days. Thinking about the food you're putting in your body, is that, you know, how are you incorporating the herbs and the medicine simply in just your intake of food? It doesn't, you don't have to go out and buy pills and capsules and in order to utilize this medicine. How can you incorporate it into like your daily nourishing routines that you have? Another way to think about self-care is, what's your self-talk sound like in your head? And are you speaking to yourself with kind words right now? Or are you being hard on yourself? You know, the way we treat and talk to ourselves internally is often reflected externally in how we perceive others and how we engage with others. You know, so doing this important work in relation to healing ourselves, healing our families and communities, and addressing things like systemic racism in our country, and just the huge grieving process that goes with all of it, it's got to start with gentleness with ourselves. In order to do deep and sustainable work, we have to take care of ourselves. And we're going to find that when we do that, we start treating other people with more respect and effective communication. Because communicating from a place of fear and depletion can lead to a lot of miscommunication and confusion, and we can't always get our points across. And maybe just demonstrating that self-care is like that first part of the work in the household. You know, working with our children and our families, and how do we demonstrate that? You know, being the change you want to see in the world, as Gandhi said. Any questions? Okay, well, we are going to wrap up. I thank all of you for joining today. And I also want to just take one more moment to honor the other aspect of tomorrow is Father's Day. I want to take a moment to honor all the fathers out there, the grandfathers, the uncles, and truly to just celebrate what that healthy masculine is. Because we need it more than ever. Like, I don't know if there's been a lot of like demonstration of like what healthy masculine is historically in our culture. It's more of a patriarchal thing. And what does it mean to be a healthy man? Is something that I think about with Father's Day, and you know, what the essence of the healthy masculine and the warrior, as being protectors, but also as being gentle at the same time, which is a very challenging thing to do. But I just really want to honor all of the amazing male role models out there of all varieties. We celebrate you, and please teach those other men around you how to step out of the good old boys club and enter into manhood, because we need our healthy men just as much as we need to bring in and re-invite in the divine feminine. We need them both right now. So happy Father's Day, and thank you all.
Sue, before we let you go,
Okay.
We have one question of any book references to learn more about the flower properties.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything top of mind?
You know what I think I need to do, Robin?
Yeah.
We just need to make a book list to put on the website.
Okay. Okay. We can do that
Let's,
where all your videos are.
yeah,
Sure.
let's do that. Because I know I typically reference the same ones.
Mhm.
So again, the authors that I really like are Dr. Deborah Francis, and that's Frances. She only has one book, so it should be the first one that comes up is the book. That's one of my favorites that I like. But I have a myriad of other ones that I reference from. So let me put together like a general reference guide for some of this work. Sharon Tilgener's book is really helpful. There's so many there. I was just looking at this one this morning that was like Ayurvedic medicine for children, for pediatrics. That was like really fun and helpful to look through. So I'll get a list of those for sure.
Okay, that would be great.
Anything else? All right. Well, thank you all for joining. And
Thank you, everybody.
yeah.
We hope you'll
Thank
join
you.
us next time. So, Sarah Sue, we're taking the first Saturday in July off, right? And then we'll be back together the first Saturday in August? Okay.
Yeah, first Saturday in August. So it's going to be a while. Unless we decide to like pop in like a mid-July one.
Okay.
But we'll see. And if
Okay.
you guys have any other further questions in regards to anything that I've talked about today at all, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is journeyhomehealing@gmail.com. My website is journeyhomehealing.com. The name of my practice and my business entity where I can do all the things that I love, essentially. Feel free to reach out.
Okay. Stay well,
All right.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.